So, identity theft is another very common privacy issue. This is topping in 2010, but the number of reported breaches, the millions of records exposed, average number of records exposed, these are all data that shows us that identity theft is a problem. In 2015, it continues to be a big problem, and what it is the forging of someone's identity. Again, it's an ethical dilemma whether someone would conduct that kind of activity or not. Some of the ways that identity theft occurs is through phishing, spear phishing, and whaling. Phishing is a technique that people use to gain personal information about someone. Generally, phishing we see a lot in email, where an email is sent asking for a response that would capture some information. We also see spear phishing, where it's targeted at a particular individual. So you have to know something about that individual to be able to send a specific email to them where it looks like it was designed for them specifically. And then whaling is just simply phishing that is targeted towards senior executives, very important people, VIPs within government agencies and organizations. Some of the ways we can protect ourselves from identity theft. These are pretty common ways, such as changing the passwords frequently or using strong passwords. Some of the things you may not think about very often. Things such as unsubscribing to emails. Don't unsubscribe to emails that you don't recognize, because sometimes by unsubscribing to them, you're alerting the people who sent the spam or the phishing message that that particular email address is active, and then they will know that and continue to harass you. Far alarming is the rerouting request for a legitimate website. We see this quite often where websites that are legitimate, there's an illegitimate version of it that looks just like it on a fraudulent website, and they're capturing information that's used to perform identity theft. A very hard spot. So, employees and privacy. It's a tricky balance because companies want to know about their employees, want to know what they're doing. At the same time, employees do want some degree of privacy as they conduct their operations, do what they're supposed to be doing. For the most part, though, employees should expect to be monitored in some ways, even if it's just as simple as email monitoring. But sometimes employers are also interested in what they are doing on website activities, and if they're doing anything during their spare time, through social networking, for example. Those are seemingly harmless activities, though that can introduce risk to the organization. Consumer privacy balance is also difficult because as consumers, we want businesses to know who we are. We want to provide them enough information so they can provide products and services that are interesting and impactful to us. But at the same time, we don't want them to know too much about us because then it becomes sort of creepy. We don't want to feel like we're being stalked by businesses. And there are techniques that organizations can use, businesses can use to understand their consumers that are pretty well hidden. Things such as cookies, which are codes that websites place on your computer to notify cookie harvesting programs where that consumer has been, what things they're looking at, etc. Spam is not used by legitimate businesses. It's an illegitimate way of blasting out emails about business goods and services to millions of people, hoping maybe a 10% return on that. It is not legitimate, but even if 10% works, it encourages the spammers to continue doing it. Obviously, adware, spyware, these are programs that are used to watch us and provide advertisements to us in ways that we don't want it. All of these are versions of Trojan horses, and that is software we don't want inside our computer. But there's software there contained within which we do want. So once we invite the software that we do want onto our system, then the software we don't want opens up, becomes a problem for us. That's Trojan horse. Government agencies struggle with this as well because they want to provide effective services to their citizens. So they need to know about their citizens. At the same time, we don't want to feel like we are being monitored. So there are law enforcement agencies such as FBI that store personal information. Obviously, we've heard about NSA and some of the things they do with electronic surveillance. They do IRS, Census Bureau, Social Security Services. These are all agencies that store personal information about citizens because they need to. But the question then becomes how much, and what are they doing with that information, and what kind of control do we as citizens have over what they have about us? There are laws about what can be shared, such as HIPAA protects personal health information, how it can be stored, how it can be shared, and how it can be accessed. And then going back to security and employees, this talks about the insider threat that we already mentioned. Insider threat is the most prominent form of attack on organizations, but organizations don't want to talk about that. They don't want to admit that their employees created problems for them, so they'll generally not mention it, and it goes unreported quite often. In terms of outside threats, we have things such as hackers. This is not accurate actually. A hacker is a knowledgeable computer user. A cracker is a knowledgeable computer user who invades other people's computers. So the book misses distinguishing those two terms. Computer viruses, worms, these are two forms of malware. They're different. Computer viruses attack themselves to legitimate software, whereas worms are self-propagating. They do not need other code to move around and cause damage. Denial of service attacks. These are floods onto websites or email servers. Any kind of server that provides services where if we overload it with pings or any other kind of communication, we can slow it down or actually get it to crash. And some of the techniques we use to provide security against viruses and worms and so forth, and denial of service attacks or DDoS or distributed denial of service attacks, things such as antivirus software, anti-phishing software, firewalls. These are all effective precautions that most of us use. Encryption is another great way of protecting our files. It doesn't keep something from being captured or stolen,